Links to previous episodes are given in the video description, so don't forget to like, subscribe and share the video. Silent Paths, Wild Hearts. Episode 10. Chapter 63. Kasia POV Gonzalo frowned at my words but didn't say anything. He kept driving in silence. He hadn't said anything since I agreed to come with him, and a small voice in my head wondered if he was just waiting to reject me in private. I recognized the little town that was 20 minutes from the pack grounds. Once we were through the town and back onto the open road, he stopped near a tree line next to a little restaurant that looked to be for sale. He turned off the engine and got out of the car. I had no idea what was happening now. He went around and opened my door and held out his hand. I took it, trying not to gasp at feeling the bond sparks again. They were so intense. I had heard stories about it, but vampires hadn't had a fated mate in centuries. He led me past the trees without a single word. We stopped near a ledge. It overlooked a part of the river that ran down the border of Crescent Moon and Guardian Moon. Despite my good eyesight, I could barely make out the pack houses that looked tiny from here. Guardian Pack used to be called Sky Moon. It was led by Celeste's parents. Less than 15 years ago, Helios wanted to get his hands on her mother, who was a descendant of one of his siblings. He had been hunting them for killing his mother. I found a wolf willing to help us, but we didn't know that he and his entire pack were depraved and sick. I could hear the disgust and guilt in his words. They murdered everyone they could and took the children and enslaved them, Celeste and Maya among them. Over the course of the last 2 decades, we bought, healed and rehomed a bunch of those girls. When we discovered Celeste had lived, Helios hunted her. We kidnapped her while she was pregnant with her twins and then tried to sacrifice her at the pyramids in Mexico. I was confused. Luna Celeste told me Helios was her brother and they seemed to get along well. Also, what did that have to do with me? After Helios discovered what really happened when his mother died, Selene sent him on a quest for redemption. Somehow, Celeste forgave him. She forgave all of us. Not only that, but she accepted Helios as her brother and, by extension, all of us as her family. She restored and gave us her parents' pack grounds to start a new life. She said something that I always thought was insane, but now I understand it. He took a deep breath and grabbed both of my hands. She said it was not about the past. We shouldn't want to live in the past. It may hold good or bad memories, but you should only want to learn from it. This place was our fresh start, our clean slate. Cassie, there's a lot of pain in our past for both of us, but I want to start fresh. We can learn from everything we've gone through. I want you to share all of your past with me, and I will do the same. But Cassie, I don't want to be stuck there anymore. I've been stuck in the same dark place for 200 years. We deserve a fresh start. You're different. I'm different. I'm sorry I refused to listen to you. His eyes were full of unshed tears as he continued, Evergreen told me what happened that night and after. A summary. I was still hurting from you not running away with me, when I heard someone say the princess had taken a beloved, I never once thought they were speaking of the other princess. If I had known, I would have broken you out of that place. I will have to live with that for the rest of my life. He closed his eyes for a moment, I don't know how or why the moon goddess gave us another chance to rectify my mistake, but I am hoping you will forgive me for being this star. I've been since you've arrived and that we can start again. You are my mate, my most precious gift. You were precious to me even before that. I want us to get to know who we are now, by sharing our past, but not get stuck living in it again. Can you give me that chance? Or have I ended up again? I could only nod. I didn't trust my mouth to work. This was what I wanted. There was a small part of me that felt like I shouldn't let him off the hook so soon, but listening to his words, I couldn't. There were a few things in his speech that I would need to correct. We both had too much on our shoulders that needed to be dealt with, but for now, all I could do was rush into his arms and let him hold me. I could feel the pressure in my head returning and a new worry filled me. I was broken. Would I even make a good mate? I took some deep breaths to try to relieve the pressure in my head. He held me tighter and took deep breaths with me. I knew he could feel the tremor of my hand on his back. I listened to his heartbeat and let it calm me. The tremor in my hand stopped and the pressure receded. Before I could stop myself, I turned my head and kissed the pulse point in his neck. He shivered but only held me tighter. We remained in the same position for a few minutes before my phone began to ring. I pulled back reluctantly and took my phone from my jeans. "Hi Adrian," I answered. "Did you get on the plane?" He questioned. "No, I'm heading back to the pack house," I said as Gonzalo started leading me back to the car. "Thanks. Did you talk out? It's almost dawn, are you someplace safe?" I looked down at the phone. We had about 30 minutes before sunrise. We're only 10 minutes away. I will get her back before the sunrise. Gonzalo said near my ear, his breath on my neck making me shiver. He smiled at my reaction. "Good. See you here. I need all the tea." He hung up. "Let's get you home," he said, as we reached the Lamborghini. His words made something inside me stir. Home. I haven't had a home in 2 centuries. "Is this your car?" I asked, finally allowing me to admire the luxurious interior of the car. "No, it belongs to Helios. He and Nat have a thing for cars." "Why? Do you like it?" he asked. "I think everyone would have a hard time not liking a $300,000 car, I just didn't think it was your thing," I said. "I do prefer more practical vehicles, however, these were extenuating circumstances and I wasn't about to decline the speed this thing could reach." His hand suddenly touched the top of mine on the middle console. He took it back as the sparks surprised him, then he asked me nervously, "Can I hold your hand?" I nodded, unable to keep my face from blushing. I suddenly felt like that girl I was in Italy 200 years ago. Shy and knowing nothing about love. He wove his hand into mine and slowed the car down. We only had 15 minutes before the sun rose and I could see the beginning red rays. "The sunrise must be truly spectacular," I said and felt a quick squeeze of my hand. Was I really talking about the sky? We reached the pack house and Adrian was waiting for me at the front doors. "You're almost late, Snow White." I was getting worried. He said, rushing at me and hugging me. Gonzalo went to the back to grab my luggage bag. "Did you work things out?" he whispered. You can ask when you're both safely inside your wing, Gonzalo said, my bag over his shoulder, and he grabbed both of our arms to lead us inside. Your arms and necks are already getting red, he explained. There were too many windows on the first floor, so we got into the elevator and went up to our floor. He put my bag inside my room and looked at Adrian. I'm not leaving until I get my tea, he said, crossing his arms, but at a look from me he added, but I do have to tell Elias that I will be gone for a little while longer, so I'll be right back. He huffed before he left. I guess I'll leave you to your tea, Gonzalo said, his lips trying to hide a smile. He approached slowly, and a bit awkwardly. He reached his hand out and touched my cheek. I closed my eyes slightly. I had thought just a couple of hours ago that I would never feel his tender touch again. He closed the distance and kissed my other cheek. Go on a date with me? 2 days from now? He asked, then cursed. Go on a date with me next week? We leave for the next raid tomorrow. I nodded and he smiled. He kissed my cheek again and left. I heard his laughter explode at the door. You're one of a kind, Adrian. I heard his receding laughter and Adrian walked in blushing. I raised an eyebrow. Get caught eavesdropping? Maybe, he said as he stomped over to the bed and sat down expectantly. Come on, Snow White. I want the tea. I don't have a hot wolf maid in the other room waiting to ravage me for a summary either. Get over here and give me a detailed account of what happened. I laughed and he rolled his eyes. Fine, I'll get it started. Did he acknowledge he acted like an asshat? Did you kiss and make up? I am guessing there's more to it than that, or you'd be riding him in his bedroom right now instead of talking to me. I sat down and told him everything that happened. When I was done, he looked so happy. Yes. I knew it. He's a good one. I always wanted a dad. He hugged me as I laughed at his choice of words. I am going to let you get some beauty sleep. We will talk more tomorrow and we'll pick something for you to wear. We need to get you some makeup too. We've still got training first thing after sunset. I said, confused. I mean for the date. Day. He looked at me like it was obvious. That's not for a week, Adrian, I rolled my eyes. We have to be prepared. He said as he got up and hugged me. Sleep, we only have half training and then we leave. It's a 3.5-hour flight to Atlanta and I don't think we'll need to stay the day, but we'll find out tomorrow at the meeting. Thank you, Adrian, I said as he walked to the door. He nodded at me and closed the door behind him. I took a shower and went to bed, not before I pulled the ring from the discarded jeans pocket and put it in the drawer. I started to unpack but figured I'd finish tomorrow, so I went to sleep. I woke up the next afternoon to a knocking on my door. I instantly assumed it was Adrian, so I got up and gave an unimpressed come in while taking off my shirt from the dresser. Cassie, I heard Gonzalo's panicked voice and turned around in time to see him covering his face and slamming into the door frame as he tried to make a hasty exit. I gave a small shriek that got stuck in my throat and grabbed my shirt again. Sorry. I thought you were Adrian. I said, laughter bubbling out of me. I'm dressed now. Do you always change in front of Adrian? He asked with a frown. You know he's gay, right? I thought you werewolves were okay with nudity. Yet, well, I'm new to the whole werewolf thing. Give me a break, he laughed. His blush was adorable. What's up? I said a little awkwardly. I was never the most articulate after waking. We're having the meeting before evening training. I made a new path to take you and Adrian to the conference room safely. I'm here to escort you, he said. I need to change. I'll be back, I said as I grabbed my suitcase bag and ran into the bathroom. I took the quickest shower on record and brushed my teeth. I quickly grabbed a pair of leggings and a looser workout shirt. I brushed my hair and came back out. Gonzalo is leaning against the nightstand while Adrian and Elias are at the door. They stopped talking when they saw me and I grew uncomfortable at the looks they were giving me. What? I said, annoyed at the attention. They are waiting for us downstairs. Gonzalo said, pushing off the nightstand while Adrian rolled his eyes at me and pulled Elias with him and out the door. Gonzalo came up to me and held out his hand. I took it happily and we walked out of the door. Adrian gave an excited little squeak as he clutched his mate when he saw us pass in front of him with our hands held. Gonzalo coughed, trying to disguise a laugh, but didn't say anything about his reaction. I blushed, but couldn't bring myself to feel anything but happiness at the moment. Gonzalo led us to the elevator and to the other side of the awning. There were giant blackout curtains hanging from the staircase with those temporary light fixtures stuck to the wall that you push to turn on. When we arrived at the base of the stairs, he stopped. Wait here, I just have to move one thing, he said. I heard him pushing something on the floor on the other side before I could hear him running up the stairs and saw a hook coming from up top. I heard his steps coming back down before he appeared at the opening and held out his hand. I took it and stepped forward. A few feet in front of the staircase was a tall Chinese-style partition with what looked like a homemade base of weights for stability. At the top, for assurance, is my guess, where two spikes come up from each end. Another set of blackout curtains were hanging from it, stretching over the entire partition and up to the beginning of the awning. This tiny tunnel ended at the entrance of the hall to the conference room's wing. He led us to the first door, which opened to a room where everyone was waiting for us. Here, too, the entire windowed wall was covered in blackout curtains. I have to go remove the partition. Be right back. Gonzalo squeezed my hand and went back out the door once Adrian and Elias were inside. I stared at the group, who were now looking at me with soft smiles on their faces. It was disconcerting, considering that while not outright rude, only Luna Celeste and Alpha Marcus had ever been more than just professionally courteous to me. I'm so happy you didn't leave, Cassie. Celeste was the first to break the creepy, uncomfortable silence. I smiled at her. I couldn't have either way. There was a mix-up with my flight and I would have needed to rebook. I heard Adrian's snort turn to cough coming from behind and I turned around. What? What am I missing? I questioned. Gonzalo came back in and noticed everyone looking at Adrian. What's happening? Okay, well, you guys are really hard-headed and these guys are bad at remembering what century we're in. None of you thought about just calling Sebastian back to the pack house instead of Gonzalo speeding like a crazy person to get her. Not that it wasn't a romantic AF gesture, but really. This is the 21st century. Just text next time. The wind disturbance you pushed our way as you sped past us almost drove us off the road. Adrian was rambling, which told me he had done something he didn't want to admit to doing. Evergreen was the only one with enough sense to text me that Cassie should not leave because Gonzalo was on his way to talk to her. We all turned to Evergreen, who was glaring at Adrian for throwing him under the bus and blushing. I turned back to Adrian. Well, I knew he wouldn't get there in time, so I, asked Evergreen to change her flight ticket to some time in the day and to reboot their system so she wouldn't be able to get back on the flight until they had finished boarding, so that he would be able to get to her before she left. We all stood there wide-eyed at Adrian until Gonzalo walked over and grabbed his head and placed a giant kiss on his forehead, making Elias growl and the rest laugh. Gonzalo pulled back and raised his arms, but you could hear the emotion in his voice when he said thank you to Adrian. Adrian looked at him happily before he cuddled up to Elias, and Gonzalo reached for my hand before we all sat down for the meeting. Right, that story makes it hard to focus on business, but we're off to the airport in a few hours, so we need to get this going, Alpha Helios said, smiling at the room. I don't have a lot to add from the previous meetings, only to say that I've confirmed the reservations and flights that Gonzalo had already made beforehand. We leave promptly at 9 p.m. We've got the bus rentals meeting us at the airport. We've got a hotel booked for half of us. The other half will come back that same day. Only Kasia, Adrian, and a few of us will remain behind to make sure they aren't caught out in the sun with any vampires we rescue, and a few of the shifters that require more intensive healing so that Nat can take breaks and not wear herself out. He looked down adoringly at his Luna before looking back at us. Marcus and Celeste will be coming back with the ones that don't stay behind. He cleared his throat and grabbed Luna Natalia's hand and pulled her up to him. I could see excitement in Celeste's eyes and confusion from Gonzalo and everyone else. Nat will no longer be joining the raids until after everything has been secured. She won't stay behind, because we all know the incredible help she is in healing the wounded and the people we rescued, so we've compromised that she won't put herself in danger for the sake of our pup. He finished with a grin. The entire room erupted in cheers and congratulatory remarks. Even I got swept into their happiness. We only found out a couple of days ago and were waiting for the right time to have everyone we care about together in one room. She is also heading abroad with us, but in a healer capacity as well. No fighting until our little one is born. Dude, you gotta go tell Mama Isabel before she gets mad at you. Theo said. She knows. We decided to tell her before this meeting, Luna Natalia said with a broad smile. After a few more rounds of congratulations, Alpha Helios cleared his throat. All right, if no one else has anything, we've cancelled the half training for tonight. There's food being catered outside where we'll give everyone else the news, so I hope you will all attend. Alpha Helios said. People started filtering out before he called, Kasia, Adrian, can you both stay behind for a moment? Elias, you can stay as well. I tensed at the serious tone in Alpha Helios' words. I felt Gonzalo squeeze my hand and, by the look of encouragement he gave me, he must know what he wanted to discuss. He waited until all of Crescent Moon was gone before they all gathered in front of us. Alpha Helios cleared his throat again. We wanted to say a few things before we start. I, and everyone here, wanted to apologize for the less than friendly welcome you've received. I hope you understand that we were trying to protect Gonzalo, but that's still no excuse. We shouldn't have intervened as much as we did. We were missing information and judged you based on the information we did have. I can't help but recognize that keeping you away from Gonzalo caused more harm than good for both of you, and for that we're sorry." Gonzalo looked surprised. This must not be part of the plan, though the rest were all nodding their heads in agreement. Gonzalo shook his head. "It was my fault, Helios. I was too stuck in my grief to see anything else. None of you have anything to apologize for. Your responses towards Cassie were based off my own." I took a deep breath before I spoke. I had honestly not expected anyone to apologize. Gonzalo and I still have a lot to talk over. I think there's misplaced blame on both of our shoulders over the last 200 years that we need to clear up. I hold no resentment at any of you for protecting him. I'm glad he has such wonderful people that care for him in his life. I looked at him and smiled before I looked back at Alpha Helios. Let's not get stuck in the past. I would like a fresh start. That's what Guardian Moon is all about, right? I let go of Gonzalo's hand and walked up to Alpha Helios, extending my hand. Call me Cassie, please. I'm happy to be here for as long as you'll have me. Gonzalo POV, she's lying about what? I said, somewhat defensively. I had already doubted her once, and it had cost me 200 years with her. I wasn't about to make the same mistake twice. She's been holding back, Helios said, his eye twinkling, and motioned to the open door. I looked in to see Cassie focused on her prey. I don't think she's realized no one's helping her anymore. She's fighting 5 people on her own. She is efficient and precise, and Helios was right, she'd been holding back. Dario was purring in the back of my head as we watched her dodge a swing by bending backwards, her hands touching the floor, using the momentum to kick the man in the jaw with her foot, turn mid-air and hitting another with her other foot as she righted herself and headbutt the man behind her. Yeah, I want a rematch. I don't want a pity win. Helios said behind me, his voice full of humor. We watched Cassie deal with the last guard. She looked around and saw that there was no one else to fight and finally saw us at the door. Where to next? She asked. Theo snorted and his eyes glazed over. It looks like we're all good. Sebastian is finishing the last room and the rest are taking the guards over to the shifters so we can put them in the cages before we leave. Just clean up left, Mrs. Beta's assassin. He said once his eyes cleared. I watched in fascination as her expression went to disappointment and then an adorable blush spread across her face at Theo's words. Instead of making a fool of myself in the middle of a mission, I chose to focus on her first emotion. Why are you disappointed? I'm not. I mean, I just thought there would be more fighting. She shrugged, trying to hide her blush. Helios' laughter exploded across the whole room. You single-handedly incapacitated over 30 people. I sent the rest of the group over to Sebastian when I realized you didn't need any help. The only reason Theo and I stayed was in case you needed a hand and to get a better gauge of your actual fighting skills. All we've done is tie people up after you've left a room. He chuckled again. Yeah, I definitely want a rematch and you better not hold back. I don't know what you're talking about, Alpha. Cassie blushed even deeper. I'm going to go get Nat and take her to the shifters. You guys can finish tying up all these guys. I'll send Paul and Nicholas to help. You guys can take a break afterwards. We'll finish with the rest of it. It's okay. I'm not tired. I'd like to help with the rescued shifters and vampires. Cassie said, grabbing a bunch of zip ties and making quick work of the people in the room. I think I understand why. No one helped her when she was taken. She never told anyone. She wanted to make sure they didn't go through what she did alone. Helios seemed to understand as well, because he nodded at us and left. We headed off following Theo, who was no doubt following the scent and pull of the mate bond. We helped get another 10 wolves, 1 bear, and 3 vampires onto the bus. Thankfully, most were aware that we were here to help and not in the worst condition. The oldest one had only been there for about 2 years and they didn't seem to beat them as much as the other places did. That was the good news. The bad news was there were about 10 half-burnt vampires in the morgue and we suspected the only reason the vampire we found was still alive was because, according to them, they'd only been kidnapped 10 days ago and they had so far only taken their blood for testing. Cassie still seemed wound up as we got back on the buses. We were headed to the outskirts of the city to a motel I had found. It was slightly seedy, which helped in case we had trouble with the rescued shifters. We were pulling out extra blankets and blackout curtains from under the bus when Theo pulled up. So, are you two okay with sharing a room? It has 2 beds, but we don't have any other rooms. They are full. I froze. Did I want to spend the night with Cassie? Yes, I did. Was I going to be able to keep my hands to myself for long? That, I didn't know. And what about Cassie? Would she be okay with this? If you guys still need time, I can switch with one of you, but we only have a single bed, so one of you will have to sleep on the couch. Theo added as he read my face. We'll be fine with the room. Thanks, Gamma Theo, Cassie answered as she handed another set of blankets and a pair of blackout curtains to another vampire. It's just Theo, Cassie, and thank you. Here's the key, he said as he handed me a key card. I took it and put it in my pocket. After everything was done, we grabbed a set of blackout curtains, blankets, and our backpacks and headed to the room. I opened the door and let her in. I closed the door behind me and was caught by surprise when Cassie slammed me against the door and kissed me. I responded, grabbing her and picking her up. She was almost a full head taller than me, so this allowed us to be more eye level. I don't mind her being taller. It puts us at eye level with those lovely, freckled, Dario purred as he wagged his tail in the back of my head. I walked her hanging onto me without breaking the kiss to the bed, where I sat with her straddling me. I released her lips and looked into her eyes and concern quickly overcame my lust. She looked afraid, her violet eyes flashing back and forth to red. What's wrong, Cassie? I asked her. She shook her head and tucked her head into my neck. I held her close and rubbed soothing circles on the small of her back. She didn't talk for over 10 minutes. Dario was pacing circles in my head. He didn't like the emotions we could feel rolling off of her. Fear and heartache. Talk to me, I begged her. I'm broken, Lalo. I am no different from all the people you rescued today. Except for the fact that they have a chance to recover. 23 years of trying to fix what's broken inside me. I am afraid you'll figure out I won't make a good mate and reject me. The pain in her voice was breaking my heart. I moved her to sit on the bed and retrieved my backpack from where I dropped it and grabbed what I was looking for. I went back to the bed and returned her to my lap. What happened to you wasn't fair, but it doesn't matter to me when I think about you. Your condition does not define you. We will figure out what happened to you. We will figure out how to fix it or how to help you deal with it. We have missed 200 years together already, Cassie. I missed you each and every single day despite my best efforts, and all I want to do right now is sew you to my side so you can never leave me again. I put the coral ring back on her finger. She looked at it and smiled before she wiped her teary face. She stood, and I was going to complain, when she reached into her pants pocket and brought out the wire ring I'd given back to her at the airport. Tit for tat. If I wear it, so will you. I chuckled and put the wire ring back on my finger. I always told her I hated wearing jewelry, but I secretly loved the fact that she wanted to make sure people knew I was hers. I grabbed her and flipped her over so that she was on the bed trapped below me. I trapped her lips with mine as I delved into her mouth. Her nails raked down my back and my shirt fell forward on my arms. I moved an eyebrow. What? You said it yourself. We've missed 200 years. Start making it up to me, Mr. Assassin's Beta. She bit her bottom lip and felt her hands gripping me. Is that a challenge, princess? I stood slightly as I removed the tattered pieces of my shirt and allowed her to look her fill. No, she answered, licking her lips as her eyes traced my abs. She met my eyes, her violet eyes shining with lust. It's a request. Dario howled in happiness in my head and I raked my claws down the middle of her shirt and sports bra. She gasped as the cool air hit her chest and I smirked, tit for tat. She threw her head back and laughed, her perky mounds pushing upwards, demanding my attention. I quickly obliged, turning her laugh into a moan as I took her rosebud into my mouth. I pulled on it, remembering like it was yesterday how she liked to be loved. I could feel myself getting painfully hard and I began to ground my length against her to feel some friction. I kissed my way through the freckles leading to her other breast. How I wanted to kiss every single one of them. I bit the little bud before I licked around the bud to soothe the pain away. Gonzalo, please. Don't tease me. I want to feel you inside me, she cried out. She screamed my name as she came, taking me with her over the edge. We laid in bed for a little while as our breathing evened out. I could feel her contentment through the bond we were beginning to repair, making my heart soar at the connection. That was a relief, she mumbled. I chuckled and felt her cuddle closer as she draped herself over me. I was hoping for mind-blowing, but I'll take what I can get. I'll be sure to up my game next time. I kissed her hair. Why was it a relief? I wasn't sure if it would trigger my seizures, she said. I stilled at her words. Guilt instantly consuming me. I hadn't thought about that at all. I'm sorry, Cassie, I didn't even think of that. I should have waited. I'm pretty sure I'm the one that jumped you. She smiled down at me. I smiled back as tension eased from me and brought my hand up to caress her face. Bold looks good on you. We laid there for a moment before we went to the shower. It was small and uncomfortable, though we still tried to make the best of it. She moaned as I washed her breasts thoroughly. Unfortunately, when I pushed her closer to the wall, her head ended up hitting the cheap low shower head. The thing was too low. Are you okay? I asked as I tried to check her head for injury. She laughed. I'm fine, but I don't think we're going to get much done in here. We finished the shower and headed back to bed. I put the blackout curtains up and, for good measure, the itchy motel blankets. She cuddled up next to me again. The bed was stiff, but she assured me she'd slept in worse places. I was just infinitely content to have her in my arms. I could have been sleeping on stone and I would have been in paradise. My arm was wrapped around her waist and I drew lazy circles on her back. Are you still awake? I asked about 20 minutes later. Yes, she said slowly, like she knew what was coming. The conversation we still had pending. Gonzalo Pov Helios gave a relieved smile and shook her hand. That's the other thing we wanted to talk to you and Adrian about, he said, giving the floor to Nat. You and Adrian are both mated to our pack members. That makes you part of the pack. The only thing we need to know is when you'd like to be officially inducted into the pack. No pressure. You both need to decide with your mates. Just give us a heads up. We'll be arranging permanent lodgings for Elias and Adrian and you'll be moving up to the beta floor when you're ready, so we need to plan for modifications to make it more vampire-friendly. Nat explained. Yes, Luna, Cassie responded. Call me Nat. As the future beta female, you and I will get to know each other very well, Nat smiled at Cassie, who looked surprised and simply nodded. There's still about an hour to sunset, so let me go put the partition back in place and you guys can head up to your rooms. I ran out the conference room and set up the partition. I would have to think of something more permanent now that Cassie will be staying here permanently. That thought brought a grin to my face and had Dario purring at the thought of her being here forever. And Adrian? He is kin, Dario said. I was a little confused at his words, but he was right. Even before I knew Cassie was my mate, he felt like kin. I didn't know why or how, but he was family. See ya, lovebirds. Adrian ran off to his room with Elias on his heels. I could see just how wrapped around his finger Elias was already. I was happy for them. Elias had always been a good warrior. He was quiet and reserved, which I think made him the perfect balance to Adrian's eternally happy personality. We walked into her room and remembering seeing her without her shirt earlier had my body pumping blood south. I stood at the door, unsure of what to do. We had a lot to talk about but not a lot of time before we had to head back downstairs. I wasn't sure if we should start it now. Want to come in? Cassie asked, patting the seat next to her on the couch. I walked over and sat next to her. How did you manage to get her to like you the first time when you never talk? Dario mocked me. I wasn't as rusty back then as I am now. I grumbled. We don't really have time to start the conversation we need to have. Want to just watch some TV for a bit? She suggested. I nodded thankfully and grabbed her free hand in mine as she flipped through the channels. She settled on a crime documentary. We sat in comfortable silence, but after a while my nerves started getting the best of me. I felt like I should be talking to her or something. I was getting more and more nervous that I was things up. Are you okay? She asked me. I'm sorry, Cassie. I am, Rusty. I haven't been with anyone in 200 years. I feel like we should be talking but we have no time for that right now. I laughed nervously, I don't know what to say. Wanna make out? I said playfully. Yes. Her soft whisper surprised me. She was looking at me with such a serious expression, a small blush on her face. Dario gave me a little push, and I found myself 2 inches from her. I put my hand on the nape of her neck. I wanted to drink this look on her face. I closed the distance and pressed my lips to hers. She sighed as I slowly started to move my lips against hers and melted against me. I wanted to take this slow. If I didn't, I'd end up throwing her against the bed and taking her. But did she have other plans? I wanted more. Like riding a bike, Dario purred. Dude, not the time. Like at all. I growled as I tried to stay in the moment. I'm just trying to be encouraged. You don't have to be rude about it, he complained. I blocked him lightly, trying to get back into the moment. Whoops. Helios called for us. I guess I can see why he mind-linked Elias instead of Gonzalo, he smirked at us. I put my forehead against her shoulder and sighed. I guess we were out of time. Cassie got off my lap. I guess I need to start locking the door. Just put a sock on the doorknob next time. Adrian laughed at us as he left the room. I need to get a tumbler. 1 second, she said. I nodded, unable to get up just yet without certain things showing and making things awkward. She poured a bag of blood into her tumbler and looked at me, a smart smirk appearing on her face. I've seen your erection plenty of times before, Gonzalo, you don't need to hide it. I kind of caused it. I barked a laugh while Dario rolled around the back of my mind laughing at me. I stood up and pulled her to me. She put her arms around my neck and I grabbed her hips and pressed her against my hardened shaft. I guess you did, I whispered against her lips. When did you get so bold? You used to be so shy about it no matter how many times you'd see it. She buried her face in my neck and I had to stop myself from shivering as she kissed my neck. I froze when I heard her pain-filled voice. When I thought I'd never get to hear your beautiful heartbeat again. When I thought I would never get to touch you, or smell you. I wrapped my arms around her and held her close. Let's go, is she okay? Adrian's voice came from the doorway again. I nodded and Cassie pulled back. I'm fine. Let's go. She said, totally ignoring the look of concern on Adrian's face. We went down to the party. As usual, Crescent Moon joined us. The entire crowd cheered when Helios and Nat announced her pregnancy, but none cheered louder than our own pack members. Being such a young and small pack, our Luna having a child was a great sign of hope and promise for the future. We were almost at 50 pack members, with another 20 guests from the council. We only have about 8 or 9 mated couples. Well, more like a dozen now, after we added Adrian and Cassie. Only one other couple was expecting. I was looking forward to having little children playing around the pack house. I had gotten used to them when we stayed at Crescent Moon. I looked over at Cassie, wondering what she thought about pups. I want about 5 or 6 to start. Dario volunteered his opinion while wagging his tail. Baby steps, Dario, I scolded him. He was getting ahead of himself. Oh, I'm thinking of all the steps we have to take to get babies, all right, he yipped. You're a horn dog. We have a lot to resolve before we should have a baby. How are we going to get her away from Queen Carissa? We need to figure out what's happening with her seizures, and we need to finish all these raids. I reminded him, and myself, because I was imagining her belly swollen with our pup. I didn't say we had to do it now. Besides, Helios didn't wait. We can make it work. We have a family that will support us no matter what, he countered, but yes, we should at least figure out what's happening with her seizures. We don't want her to be at risk during a pregnancy. I sighed in relief. At least I wouldn't have to keep fighting with him over the issue. 3 hours later, we were sitting in the company jet on the way to Atlanta. I was on my tablet, trying to organize the teams. Something I would usually have done before now, but hadn't been able to focus on anything the last few days. You don't want Isidro with Leo. Their sparring has been more fighting than learning. Leo was making fun of him for the beating I gave him. Put him with Olivia, Jonah, and Nicholas. They get along okay. Cassie said from where her head was resting on my shoulder. I thought she'd fallen asleep. I grunted and started rearranging the groups. I showed it to her after and she nodded. Have you found any information about what happened to you? I asked her once I was finished with everything I had left untouched for the past couple of days. No. There's a few mentions of trying to find a way to make werewolves live as long as vampires and trying to make shifters by experimenting on humans, but none of them seem to be anywhere close. We knew they were experimenting on humans, but the video footage we have showed none of them ever survived. From everything we know, no one ever experimented on vampires. We don't actually know of anyone else being experimented on outside of you. Just beaten and medical tests performed. Wait, you have video? She asked. Yes, only from the first lab we raided. When we first became aware that they were kidnapping shifters, it was because some friends of Nat's were kidnapped. It's how we crossed paths with her. We couldn't get into the lab and we discovered they were tracking him and he allowed himself to get kidnapped so we could rescue them. We have those videos in a separate place. Nat doesn't like people watching them. Helios was tortured a fair bit. I whispered, to make sure Nat couldn't hear me. He didn't get experimented on though? She asked. I shook my head, they thought he was a normal human. The plan, as far as we could tell, was to torture him for Nat's location and then kill him. That's how you got involved in all of this. I nodded in answer to her question. Can I ask a question? She nodded in return. Why didn't you tell Carissa about what you went through when you got kidnapped? I asked. She sighed, I had planned to. Before I even knew about the seizures, but when I got back to the estate, they had given away my room already. I had only been gone 6 weeks and they gave away the room that had been mine for almost 130 years. I figured there was no point. She didn't care. I haven't had a personal conversation with my sister since the day she got me out of prison. I used my earnings to try to get answers from specialists in Italy, and I even took a few night courses about a decade ago to try to understand, but I still have no answers. Would you be opposed to some specialists taking a look at you when we get back? She hesitated. Dr. Castle is already looking. I am still trying to recover from the financial drain of the last set of specialists. I don't think it's a good idea until we know what they did to me, so we have a better idea of who I need to see. These are specialists the council lent us, I said. She looked thoughtful for a moment and then nodded. Okay. If you think it would help. We arrived in Atlanta and headed to the lab the rest of the way on bus. Luna. I am going to need your help. I mind-linked Nat. What's wrong? Her concerned voice replied. Nothing. I looked up some things. I have some ideas for modifications to the pack house. For Cassie, she asked, and Adrian. Yes, I added. We want to make some too. What did you have in mind? I found a company that makes window tints to help people that have xeroderma pigmentosum. It's an extreme sun allergy. The windows are designed to block out UV rays. It should work for Adrian and Cassie. If we could get the windows treated on the first floor and the beta floor, we could set Adrian up on my floor, and that way, they could move about the pack house during the day without fear. We can set some screen doors on the main entrance doors that can also be treated so we can still keep the doors open, I explained. You want Adrian on your floor? She asked in surprise. I don't mind having him there. It's a big floor. I told her. Send me an email with the company you found and I'll take a look, she instructed. Thank you, Nat. I'm just happy to see you happy, Gonzalo. If she's your family, she's mine, she said with determination. I looked down at her hand in mine and smiled at the thought. She is my family now. The bus turned out of the city and Cassie sat back down. How long? About 20 minutes. I said. She nodded and sat cross-legged on the seat. She put on some earphones, closed her eyes and took a deep breath. I was going to ask something when I felt a hand on my arm. Adrian shook his head at me and then sent me a text and pointed at me to look at it. Adrian, this is her process. Because of the seizures. You won't get much out of her again until the fighting is over. I nodded at him and went back to my tablet. I had an idea for our date, and if she was busy, I had some time to look around for what I needed. We pulled around off to the side to wait for the scouts we sent ahead. Everyone had their assignments. I began clearing the way to the computers with a new set of people. I liked to rotate their assignments so that no one got comfortable. Comfortable got you killed. Cassie had gone off with Theo and Helios to clear the rest of the building. We secured the main office areas and left 2 to help Evergreen and went to find Theo. I found them down the left side of the building. He and Helios were just standing at the entrance of a room, arms crossed. What's going on? I asked. We were discussing your mate. I think she has some explaining to do, Helios said seriously. I frowned. What do you mean? She's been lying, Gonzalo, Theo said, his tone serious, his face unreadable. Kasha POV, will you tell me? Will that overwhelm you and cause a seizure? He asked, never stopping the motion of his fingers on my back. Where do you want me to start? I asked. Everything. I sighed and took a moment to gather my thoughts. The day I got your note from Sabina, my father intercepted it. He had suspected something was different. I had refused his match for me and he found that unacceptable. I didn't realize he had started having people following me. Sabina, thankfully, was loyal to me and she told me he knew what the letter said, so I didn't go. I knew he would have me followed and I didn't want to put you in danger. I took a deep breath. I thought I could trust Carissa. She said she would help me see you. I packed a bag. I didn't know if I could go through with it. I didn't know if I could leave my life behind. But I loved you and I didn't want to leave you, so I packed a bag so I could leave if that's what we decided at the end of our conversation. She still helped me get out, but I noticed the tail I had on me when I was near the woods. I agreed to leave with her on the condition that they let you go. When I heard her tell her guards to take care of you, I tried to go back, but her guards knocked me out. My breath shuddered as I tried to keep myself composed. I hugged him tighter to me, reminding myself that he was alive. I felt his lips on my hair, his fingers still drawing on my skin. When I came to, I tried to leave, but they wouldn't let me. I argued with my father, but when Carissa came in and told me you were dead, I broke. My father called me pathetic. He said I was weak and falling in love with a human had only made me weaker. His daughter would not be a disgrace. He said some other things. I took a deep breath as I remembered his cruel words. I snapped. I had never in my life felt so much rage and sorrow. I attacked Carissa first. I punched her as I pushed past her. His guards tried to stop me and I don't remember what happened next. Dissociative amnesia is what they called it. The next thing I knew, there were 4 dead guards, my father's neck was bleeding and they were trying to heal him. I was covered in blood and being held down by 3 guards. I got sent to the dungeons, then there was a trial. You got sentenced to death? He asked, his voice tense. I nodded. What made them change their minds? I don't know. My father never talked to me after he stripped me of my title. I didn't see Carissa again until she ascended the throne. How did you end up an assassin? He asked. Hell's Pocket. For all of its bad reps, it's not that dissimilar to a regular prison other than being coop. It's hard to keep to yourself. 2 main things can happen. If you want to survive, you have to associate yourself with the baddest one in the group so they can protect you or you get eaten alive. Who did you associate yourself with? I didn't, I kissed his chest as I smiled at the memory. But you said, the confusion in his voice was clear. I turned my head up and kissed his chin next. The baddest one in there was not a person I wanted to associate with. I was okay with dying at that point. My life was full of guilt and sorrow. I didn't care what happened to me. His arm got tighter around me as I explained. I got beaten up many times over the first couple of years, but I refused to do anything to retaliate. Everyone knew I was a disgraced princess. They thought it was fun to break me, and when they couldn't, they took it as a challenge. The beatings and their intensity increased. I don't know if it was my pride or just my desire to die at that point, but I just took it. I never screamed. I just kept my head down and said nothing. One day, someone stepped in and defended me. An old man. He was a lifer by the name of Miles Lee. I remember it clearly. He told me it didn't matter if the title was taken from me. I was a princess, and they should vow to me. That I should make them respect me and fear me. He was the one who began training me. He taught me the one way to survive without aligning myself with anyone was to become a bigger one than them. I smiled as I kissed his chest, my memories of training with him were some of the only good memories I have of that place. He spent months training me and eventually I beat leader after leader. Everyone that thought they could take me on until they learned to just let me be. There was pride in his voice this time. You became the baddest one in the place. Yes. Word of my fighting skills must have gotten back to Carissa. They probably kept tabs on me. When she ascended to the throne, she came to see me. She offered me a deal. I could be released, but I would need to work for her. She had a problem she would eventually need to deal with and she didn't trust anyone to solve it. I was allowed a couple of years to get more training, as long as I did it away from the estate. I sighed. At that point, my father still lived there and he made sure to show his displeasure any time he saw me. I was called traitor and everyone was instructed not to call me by my name. After that, I trained as hard as I could. The first job I was sent on, I almost died. I had no resources, no money, no experience. I was paid for my work, but I was closed off of all of my family's resources. I spent some money from that first job bribing a guard to let me in to train with Miles every other day. He died about 80 years ago and that was when I first started training with weapons. How did you meet Adrian? He asked, resuming his lazy circles on my back. I was working a job in Salerno. Nothing big, but my sister likes to send me out as much as possible. He was human back then, I said. I heard his intake of breath. Turning a human had been deemed illegal over 1,500 years ago. They were too volatile and threatened to expose us to the human population. It also could potentially upset the delicate balance of power and truce between species. There was something about him that I was drawn to. Life seemed less dark when I would talk to him. He worked in this dingy bar that was frequented by supernaturals. He wasn't aware of what was going on around him. He was just him. Happy, despite his terrible circumstances. What happened? He asked as his fingers resumed his play on my back. I was trying to get some information from a source. There was an altercation with another set of soups and he got caught in the middle. They tore into his stomach and shoulder. I don't know why I did it. I was just not ready to see his light gone from this world. I turned him. I took a deep breath to stop myself from remembering how he looked that night. The only favor I've asked of Carissa since that night was to allow him to live. I fought her not to destroy him and became even more of a pariah because of it. But he deserved a chance. He hadn't gone feral. He was still just him. He accepted what happened and he wasn't mad for the choice I made for him. I looked up at the ceiling. Eventually, Carissa agreed but with conditions. I was his sire. I was to teach him our ways, and teach him how to be an assassin so he could be of service as well. I sighed. His association with me and the manner of his vampire birth made him a pariah by association. It's the only part I regret. If someone else had turned him, he might not have had a transition as hard as it was. He has no friends, he's not allowed in the estate. I smiled. Despite that, he refuses to let me feel bad about it. He's always made fun of the fact that the only way he was allowed to live was under my care. Add that I am his sire, he likes to tease me that I'm his mom. Gonzalo's hand went still and I looked up at him. What? I asked. He had a silly smile on his face. Dario has been telling me he's kin, and a couple of weeks ago I suggested adopting him so he wouldn't have to leave Guardian Moon. I grinned back. He did tell me he always wanted a dad, yesterday. I felt my body shake as he gave out a loud booming laugh. I cuddled closer, inhaling his innately Gonzalo scent. I hadn't been this happy in a long time. It felt like maybe I had a chance to have a home again. We continued talking about some of the jobs I've had and his years with Helios. We fell asleep sometime around 10 a.m. but woke up to a disturbance outside. Gonzalo got out of bed immediately, putting on a pair of sweatpants. I followed suit and went to open the door when Gonzalo pulled me away as the door began to swing open. I felt the burning heat on my arm and shoulder as I hit the bed. I grabbed the blankets and rolled to the side to hide between the beds. The door closed and Gonzalo was by my side immediately. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine." "Go check on what's going on," I reassured him. He looked like he wanted to argue, but then he crushed his lips to mine and left. I went over to the bathroom and inspected my shoulder. It was just a bad sunburn. It should be gone in an hour or two. About 10 minutes later, I was on my phone talking with Adrian when I heard Gonzalo come in. "I'll see you later." "Elias just came in," he told me. "Yeah, sounds good." I hung up. "Are you okay?" Gonzalo asked as he walked over to the bed. He took my arm to check me over. "I'm okay. I feel stupid for not checking the time yet." "These blackout curtains are really good," I snorted. "It's only an hour from sunset. Can I get you anything? We've got a couple bags of blood in Helios' room if you need it. Will that speed up your healing?" "I'm fine, Gonzalo, it's just a sunburn." "What happened outside?" "The bear shifter we rescued. He shifted in his room. Made a bit of a mess. We had to sedate him with the emergency tranquilizer Dr. Castle sent us. He'll be sleeping like a baby until we get home." He sat on the bed and patted the side of the bed. We talked for the next hour. Conversation was always easy with Gonzalo. He told me the story of how they came about becoming werewolves. I told him about some more missions I've been on, occasionally causing his wolf to growl when it came to me getting hurt. We switched to plans for the future. What the raids meant and what the pack wanted to do after this was over. We were in the middle of a good make-out session when we heard the knock on the door. "Bus leaves in 45 minutes. Theo ordered supper on the plane. We'll have your tumbler ready on the bus, Cassie." Sebastian's voice sounded from the other side. "Thanks," I screamed, before cuddling back into Gonzalo's arms. "So what's next?" "We should have the new building for rehabbing the shifters by next week, so there will be a lot of that. I'll start planning for Glasgow, send a couple of scouts ahead. It will be a little more complicated. I will need to find lodgings with local packs willing to deal with their trauma. Helios is asking the Council if we can get some help from the European Council to connect us to local ones. It will be a busy month. What do you need me to help with?" "I'll give you a list of the places we need to go. Maybe you'll have some contacts or suggestions on how to best approach the places. For the most part, we could really benefit from your fighting skills. Keep training us. I've already noticed a few have improved under the new training regimen you and Sebastian came up with. In a few months, you may need to help Nat with her Luna duties the closer she gets to the end of her pregnancy, so you may be spending a fair amount of time with her." I pouted at that last portion. "I don't think she likes me much. She was just being protective of me. Trust me, she will love you," he murmured in my ear. I shivered and moved to kiss him, and then there was another knock on the door. "Snow White, are you awake? It's time to drink and go," I groaned. Gonzalo laughed as he opened the door. "One day, you'll have to sit down and tell me how the nickname Snow White came about. Gonzalo has basically been sleeping in this room with you for the last week and you're now nervous about what you want to wear for a date." Adrian asked me. "I haven't been on a date in 200 years, Adrian. Be kind to me," I mumbled. "I'm just saying. You guys have been spending so much time together. What is there to be nervous about?" "I don't know. I just am, so help me." "You said you would." It was irrational. I could see that, but I couldn't help it. I didn't know what he had planned. He said to wear casual clothing and we were leaving pretty late, and he told me to pack a change of clothes. He left a few hours ago, saying he needed to get some things ready. Adrian was right, he'd been sleeping here almost every night since the raid. I shouldn't be this nervous, but I was. I had already changed 3 times, which was dumb, because all of my clothes were black. There was a knock on the door and Adrian stood up to open the door. Theo walked in with 2 bags. "What's this?" I asked. "Reinforcements. You have no clothes suitable for a date. Theo did us a solid while he was in San Diego for a meeting and picked up some outfits for you. He knows what Gonzalo likes." Adrian smirks at me. My mouth dropped. "You went shopping for me?" He shrugged. "There's a lot of little shops close to the San Diego offices. Have fun tonight." He smiled as he handed me the bags and left. I opened the bags and pulled things out. Okay, not so bad. There wasn't any pink. I grabbed a pair of dark washed jeans and a shiny red silk blouse and went into the bathroom to change. When I came back out, Adrian had a bunch of stuff on the nightstand. "What is that now?" I asked with dread. "Makeup," he said. "Nope, not happening. The clothes are enough, Adrian." "I've never worn anything but chapstick," I said while trying to escape the room. Adrian grabbed me by the waist and threw me on the bed. "Relax. It's not going to be the whole pomp and circumstance. Trust me. I will give you a more natural look." "But I am already natural." "How more natural can you get than actual natural?" I argued back. 20 minutes later, and I couldn't argue with his results. I looked like me, but the subtle makeup he added enhanced things in my face I never noticed were there. I got a text from Gonzalo at just before 4 a.m. asking me to meet him downstairs. I felt like that girl from She's All That, walking down to meet my Freddie Prinze Jr. Except this was no romantic movie where someone was trying to make me something I wasn't. I smiled as I saw him at the bottom of the stairs. This was no Freddie Prinze Jr. This was my Lalo. This was the man that loved me when I was naive and sheltered and was beginning to love me as I was now, broken and a little worse for the wear. He was much better than Freddie Prinze Jr. He was wearing a guayabera and loose khakis, his hands in his pockets and sandals? Where were we going? The thought left my head as soon as he saw me. The smile on his face grew, making the butterflies in my stomach go crazy. I loved this man. "You're so beautiful," he said as he kissed me. "I feel overdressed now." "I can fix that," he purred as he took my overnight bag. We stepped out of the pack house and down the steps. I got really confused as we started walking. "Where are we going?" I asked. "A house just a little way down," he said. He must have read the disappointment and confusion on my face because he stopped and pulled me close. "What's wrong?" I shook my head. "Hey, talk to me." "What's wrong, Cassie?" I must have misunderstood. I thought we were going out on a date. Outside of the pack house. I thought he might get upset that I was expecting something else. Instead he grinned at me. "I am and I'm not." At my further confusion he laughs. "Trust me, you're going to like this." He pulled me with the waist and led me down to a small rundown house. I kept my thoughts to myself as he led me up the steps. He pulled out a silk blindfold and I moved an eyebrow. "Last time you put blindfolds on me, I couldn't walk for 2 hours." His eyes darkened at the memory, and he grinned. "I can't promise that won't happen again tonight, but not right this second." He put the blindfold on, and I heard the door open before he guided me in. I followed in the dark, our steps echoing as if the house was empty. He led me down a set of stairs and I felt something soft under my feet. I could swear I could smell the ocean as he led me to what I assumed was the middle of the room. He removed the blindfold and I frowned. We were in a basement, in the dark. With my enhanced eyes, I could see a giant pile of cushions on the floor, which was covered in some sort of soft carpet. There was some sort of mist machine in a corner that I assumed was where the ocean smell was originating from. I looked at Gonzalo, who grinned at me when I moved an eyebrow in question. "I'm not done yet." "Sit," he ordered as he led me to the makeshift bed on the floor. I took my shoes off and sat next to him. He pulled closer and kissed me. I let out a little moan and he groaned before he pulled away. "Not yet," he said huskily. I saw him pull out something from his pocket. It was a small phone that I didn't recognize. "Since I've known you, you've always wanted to see the sun rise. You said it back in Sicily, and you said it again a week ago. I always wanted to find a way to grant you your wish. This was the best I could come up with for now." He pushed some buttons and then some machines I hadn't noticed above us began to come online. The walls and the floor around us were illuminated by projectors. Bright blue at first, then an image of the ocean at night came into focus. "This is a live feed of Prince Edward Island. Sunrise is in about," he looked down at the phone, 4 minutes. I understood what he'd done now. The fluffy khaki carpet, the smell of the ocean, the projectors. He was letting me experience a sunrise on the beach. I could feel the tears forming in my eyes. He'd given me the sunrise. I stood up and looked all around. The wall behind us had a lighthouse against the shore. The floor was projecting the rocky shore that led to the sand around the bed of pillows. The khaki carpet helped sell the illusion. All around me, I could see nothing but sand and the ocean. A chuckle escaped me as a fan turned on, making my hair sway as if I was there on the shore. He thought of everything, I thought, as I felt a tear fall from my eyes. No one had ever done something like this for me. He stood up and came up to hold me from behind as the first of the golden rays of the sun began to peek through. The sparks dancing along our bodies enhanced the sight before me. I was hypnotized by the rays dancing in the ocean. The way the clouds seemed to be colored gold with light. The entire room became encompassed with beautiful hues of gold, red, orange and light. Light. How to describe the world in the sun? It looked alien and beautiful. It held hope and happiness. The promise of something new. Endless possibilities. In this moment that Gonzalo had gifted me, everything seemed possible. Leaving Carissa, being a mate, surviving what was broken within me. Is this how everyone else feels when the sun rises each day? Like the world could be conquered and happiness was within your grasp? How is it that they can wage wars when they can wake up to this? I looked down at the arms around my waist. Then again, there were more wonderful things than the sunrise and I would fight to the death to keep them. Gonzalo POV. I watched wonder and emotion seep into Cassie's eyes. It had been a pain to get it set up. I had paid more than the machines cost to get them here on time and owed Evergreen and Elias a favor for helping me set it up, but it was all worth it to experience the sunrise with her. She was entranced by the sunrise while I was entranced by her face. The way the projector light beamed down, casting shadows on her delicate features. The way her eyes looked amethyst as the yellow lights from the projected sunrise illuminated them. Cassie has always been beautiful, but right now, she looked right down ethereal. A goddess in her own right. I guided her down to the nest I'd made for us as we watched the sun pull up into the sky. She seemed fascinated by the yellow ball in the sky the rest of us had always taken for granted. She seemed to finally come back to me around 7 a.m. I was lying on the pillows watching her as she sat watching the beach. I could have laid there forever. When she finally looked down at me, my breath caught in my chest. I couldn't believe I fought against the love that was so clear in her eyes. How did I not notice it? It's the question that had plagued me since that day at the airport. How stupid was I to never notice how she looked at me? She had never hidden from me. Every attempt she made to talk to me was like a punch in the gut now. I would spend the rest of my life regretting not having her in my arms a whole week sooner. I would spend the rest of my life thankful for how easily she forgave me. I should have been made to grovel and sleep at her door for years and yet she'd welcomed me in her arms instead. Did you like your surprise? I asked. She smiled coyly and laid down next to me. That was the most awe-inspiring thing I've ever seen in my life. How do you not spend every morning watching the sunrise? I have better things to look at, I smirked as I traced circles along her shoulder. So, are we staying here all day? She asked as she wrapped her arms around my waist. The sun is up. We're stuck here for the next 9 hours. Oh yes, and what would you like to do for the next 9 hours? Well, it is technically time to sleep for you and way past my bedtime. I told her, pulling the blanket over us. She chuckled and cuddled closer. You're right, good night, she said as she closed her eyes. I chuckled and buried my face in her neck. I loved her scent and the way she shivered when I exhaled on her skin. She pushed me to my back and unbuttoned my shirt. It was my turn to shiver as she pushed the fabric apart and ran her nails lightly down to my belt. You had to go and tease her. Now look at us. Dario pouted. Like you could do better. I countered. Well, I wouldn't have told her we should go to bed. He insisted arguing right now is not helping. She's going to fall asleep. How about you shut it and let me do my thing? I argued. Your thing is not working. We've spent more time cuddling over the last week when we should be worshipping her every day. You're doing it wrong. He insisted. We have 200 years of your stuff. I'm trying to take it slow. Stop thinking. We have forever together. I'm trying to do this right. I said, wondering why I was spending time arguing with him instead of trying to seduce our mate. You're just going to make her think you don't want her. She's initiated almost every encounter this week. If she gets upset with us, I'm going to make you regret it. He growled. I'm going at her pace. And how exactly are you planning on doing that? You going to come out of my head and fight me? I taunted him. I didn't expect him to take control and push my arm, and I don't think he expected me not to resist. My arm went flying and landed on top of Cassie's back with a whack. We both froze as she yelped and sat up. Now what? What am I going to tell her? I growled. Dario tucked his tail between his legs and whimpered. What, Gonzalo? Cassie said. She looked annoyed and hurt. Dario did it, I quickly answered. Dude, what? You haven't even let me meet her yet and you've already thrown me under the bus. Not cool, Dario barked at me. It's the truth. I defended myself. Take one for the team. He said, annoyed. Why did Dario want to hit me? Doesn't he accept me? Does he hate me because I don't have a wolf? The hurt in her voice told me that this isn't the first time she's had this thought. Way to go, I thought. You're making things worse. Let me talk to her. He growled as he tried to push forward. Wait, you're the one telling us to wait to mark her. Let me deal with this. One person at a time, I said as I fought him for control. Of course, he accepts you. I told you he was the one fighting me not to reject you. Why would you think he doesn't want you because you don't have a wolf? I asked gently. She looked down at her hands. Everything I've ever known about wolves said that their wolves usually go crazy with need to mark their mates. Adrian was marked days ago. You haven't even tried or brought it up. Let me talk to her, please. I can explain. Dario said more calmly. He wants to talk to you. Will that be okay? I asked her. Her eyes widened and she bit her lips nervously before she nodded. All right, Dario, you're up. Time to meet your mate. I said. Why did you have to say it like that? Now I'm nervous. He said as he started pacing. You keep saying you can do it better. Now's your chance. I reminded him. This is the first time you let me forward to talk to her. A pep talk would have been nice. He grumbled. Don't do it up. I said unhelpfully. You changed, man. You used to be nicer. He begrudged me. You started it. You have been telling me I'm doing everything wrong since we got back from the airport. I said indignantly. His constant criticism never did anything but make me nervous. I was trying to help. he barked back. I laughed out loud and Cassie moved her head and I could tell she was trying not to laugh at me. 1 second. He's a little nervous, I told her and she smiled. Great. Way to make it awkward. You're really talking me up there. First, I'm who that hits his mate, then I ask to talk to her and don't come forward because I'm nervous. Why don't you just neuter me right now? He said as he laid down and put his paws over his head. I sighed, realizing this was a big deal for both of them. She is going to love you. You are her mate. Just be yourself. I'll be right here with you. You have all my memories. You know she is amazing and she will listen to what you have to say. Ready? I said gently. He paced in my head a few times before he sat down and nodded at me. I kissed Cassie on the lips and smiled at her before I let Dario come forward. We've never flipped consciousness in human form, so this was as new to me as it was to him. Cassie's eyes widened. Dario? She asked shyly. My beautiful princess, Dario purred. His voice came out deeper than mine. Hi, she smiled at us. Him. It was hard to watch from the back. I got a new appreciation for Dario always being stuck in the back. I made a mental note to let him forward more often. He had a right to spend time with our mate. You wanted to talk to me. That and other things, Dario said as he put a hand on her face. Cassie closed her eyes as he leaned over and kissed her. It was sweet and tender and I felt her sweet sigh in every corner of my soul. He put his forehead on hers. Why does my princess think I wouldn't want her when I would walk to the very depths to find her? When I've already fought tooth and nail against my human's hard-headedness to be with you. Hey! I complained. Cassie laughed and put her head in the crook of our neck. She stayed there for a minute before she pulled back with a more serious face and she asked, then why won't you mark me? Dario sighed and I held my breath. I had been asking him the same question and he would just tell me it wasn't time. I don't know. Kara said I needed to wait until the full moon. That it would help you. When did Kara reach out? Have you been holding out on me? I asked and of course he ignored me. Kara? Luna Celeste's wolf? Why would she care if you marked me? Cassie said and I detected a hint of jealousy in her tone. Kara is Seleni's favorite wolf. She has a direct connection to her. She and Celeste's gift of foresight have helped us along our journey. We can trust her, princess. Dario buried his face and licked her marking spot. You have no idea how hard it is to hold myself back from marking you. How hard it is for both of us to keep from binding you to us for life. I have to fight every base instinct in me not to do it, but if it's for you, I would wait forever. She wouldn't tell you more. Cassie answered softly as Dario laid her down on the bed of pillows. Dario shook his head. We've learned to listen to Selene without asking. She's only allowed to give us so much guidance and she's never steered us wrong. So are you really okay that I don't have a wolf? She asked timidly. You are more than enough. More than we could have asked for. He said, bringing tears to Cassie's eyes. All right, I had to give it to him. The old wolf was smooth. Told you, he taunted. Yeah. I rolled my eyes. Sleep, my princess. We will never leave you, he said as he caressed her hair. Cassie slowly fell asleep in our arms and we continued to stare at her until we were sure she was in a deep sleep. Dario finally retreated and I came forward. Now you understand why I don't hump her the first chance we get? I asked him. Yeah. He rolled his eyes as he laid down to sleep. I fell asleep but woke up before Cassie did. I dragged my fingers down her arm softly, liking the way it would explode in gooseflesh. I stayed there watching her sleep for 20 minutes before I saw her sleepy eyes flutter open and meet mine. The soft smile of recognition always made my heart swell. "Good morning," she said. Good morning mi muñequita con labios de ruby, my petite doll with ruby lips," I whispered as I bent down to kiss her nose. Her eyes teared up when she heard the nickname I'd given her so long ago. I was preparing to duck down to her neck when I felt Helios pulling at the mind link. I sighed and fell back. "What's wrong?" she asked. "Helios is trying to mind link." "Give me a moment," I asked. When she nodded, I opened my connection. "Yes, Alpha," I responded. "I know I'm interrupting, but we need Cassie back at the pack house." "It's urgent," he cut right to it. "What's happening?" I looked over at Cassie and she was frowning at her phone. "I am not sure. Prince Armand is on video conference and refuses to hang up until he speaks with her," he said. I sighed. "Okay, we'll be there shortly." "We need to head back," I say to her as I look at her luxuriously long legs longingly as she stands up and stretches. "Agreed. I need a computer. Something's weird." "What's going on at your end?" she asked as she pulled on her pants. "Prince Armand is demanding to speak with you," I said as I got up to dress. "I thought it was too easy," she mumbled. "What do you mean?" I said as I stopped buttoning my shirt. "I sent an email to Carissa and Armand last night while you slept," she answered. "You wrote an email while I slept?" I stared at her. I didn't feel her get up at all. No, I had written it a few days ago. I just hadn't sent it because, well, I didn't know where we stood. I told them Adrian and I weren't coming back as we had found our family here. I am still on mission for them, but I won't answer to them. I will just advise them of developments. I have one text saying don't come back from Carissa and about 15 missed calls from the estate," she explained. "They can't take you from me." "Don't worry," I said as I pulled her to me and I kissed her chin. She sighed and nodded and we headed to the pack house. We walked hand in hand into the conference room. Helios, Nat, Theo, and Seb were all sitting at the head of the table, while Adrian and Elias were seated beside Theo, looking nervous. I went to the other side of the table and sat down next to Helios, Cassie at my side. "What is this about Armand?" Cassie asked, her voice cold and stern. "You need to come home, Kasia. You should have flight information in your inbox soon." "You're to leave tomorrow evening," King Armand said, and I tensed. He can't tell her what to do anymore. "Don't worry," Helios mind-linked and I gave him a quick grateful nod. It was good to know he had my back. "I've already sent you Adrian's and my retirement confirmation. We are home," she said and looked at Adrian, who smiled gratefully. "I don't give what you want. The vampire community needs you home." Some things have happened, he said, making us growl as we stood. Cassie held up a hand for us to calm down. She remained standing while we sat. I took her hand under the table to give her strength as well as calm myself and Dario. I have not been part of the community for 200 years and Adrian was never accepted. Whatever it is you need, find someone else to do your dirty work, she answered. There is no one else, he hissed, and then looked at everyone in the room. Can we have the room? This is delicate information that is not out to the public yet. It's a mess we'd like to keep in-house for the time being. No, Cassie and I said at the same time. They aren't going anywhere. They are my pack now. They have accepted me and I them. Whatever you tell me, I will turn around and tell them, so let's skip middleman. What do you want, Armand, and where is my sister? Your father is dead. Your sister is missing. There's evidence she killed him and is behind the vampire kidnappings you've been investigating. The council is willing to pardon you and take your place as queen. Your rightful place at my side, he answered. I stood up before I could help myself. My eyes turned black as Dario and I both growled, mind your place, mutt. King Armand hissed at me. Mind yours, Armand. My place was never at your side. Why should I care that you're without a queen? I was stripped of my title 200 years ago. I want nothing to do with it. She hissed back. Come on, Kasia. You can't possibly prefer to be a random member of a mutt pack. You don't belong there. You belong at my side, as was originally planned. I can't rule without a queen of royal birth and the only other is your cousin in Norway. If you don't come home, I will be replaced. Cassie snorted, good luck with that. If that's all, we have things to do. Cassie reached for the remote to turn off the teleconference. If someone replaces me before Carissa if found, they will not hesitate to execute her. Armand said, making Cassie freeze. Join our Facebook and WhatsApp group for more updates, link is given in description. Rest audiobook will be continued in next episode.